Darren Paffey, welcome. You were elected to represent Southampton Itchen in July. As it happened, you were only the third Darren ever to be elected to Parliament.
Right.
But that's not why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you because you are one of a few MPs who have gone before throughout history, who grew up in foster care and were adopted. So let's start by asking you, how did you end up in care?
So I was 10 months when the social services in Northumberland, where I was born, stepped in. My birth dad had never been on the scene. My mum was a single mum, lived with a couple who were looking after her for a while. And then she got with a guy who, let's say, wasn't the ideal relationship. And in the end, both of us ended up in hospital, to my understanding. And that's when they stepped in and said, actually, that's not a safe place for this little baby to go back to. So when I was 10 months old, I was put in short-term foster care with the Paffey family. And the rest is history. And I never left, eventually was adopted.
So what was your experience of being fostered and then they went on to adopt you? How old were you when they adopted you?
So 10 when I got adopted. And the years between going to live with them and the adoption itself were in many ways perfectly normal. I was in a family home. I know lots of kids with care experience end up in more institutional homes and so on. But I have great memories of playing in the garden. My dad was a milkman at the time. He had the milk float out the front. I can remember pretending to drive and so on. So really happy childhood in loads and loads of ways. But in other ways, it was completely abnormal because I had a social worker who would come to our home, sit there, ask me lots of questions pretty regularly, as is the right thing to do. But that's when I started to think, well, my friends don't have this. I remember at primary school being pulled out of class because I had a medical appointment. I had to have full strict medicals every 6 months. My friends didn't. We had court cases and so on. As an 8-year-old, I remember not only having a social worker, but I was appointed a solicitor and a guardian ad litem for one of the court cases where they were making a decision on whether I went back to my birth family or stayed with the Paffeys. So in those ways... Did your birth
family want you back?
Yeah, by that point, I had lived there pretty much my entire life. So they were very much up for me staying with them. But yeah, there was new legislation coming in around appeals and so on. So social services were asked to make decisions at various points and take it to court.
Wow. And this is all going on when you're 8?
Yeah, the 8 is when I have my sort of first memories of it. I mean, the great thing is my parents were always completely honest and I never remember being sat down and told that I was fostered. I know of people who find out, often when they're adolescents, the massive shock that they're adopted. I can't imagine anything more disruptive in life. So I'm really grateful that it was always very obvious to me, plus the fact that, we had this, in a sense, other adult coming into our home every now and then and asking lots of questions as a social worker and making sure that I was okay. So that there was no way of me not knowing.
So you sort of you never have that memory of that conversation saying we didn't give birth to you.
No, exactly.
But you always sort of knew that you were being looked after.
That's right.
By a new mum and dad, your real mum and dad.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd always called them mum and dad. Apparently, when I was at preschool, I got quite cross and bolshy. So being a politician was probably the right career choice for me. When one of the play workers used my birth name, which was absolutely right, that's what my legal name was at the time, my surname. But I said, no, that's not me. I'm Darren Paffey. And I insisted on the surname when I was really little.
Really? Mm. So you weren't Darren Paffey when...
No, that's right.
Because you were being taken care of by the Paffey family. Have you reached out subsequently to your biological mum?
Yeah, initially, for the first couple of years that I was with the Paffeys, obviously there was contact meetings that happened.
How was that?
I mean, I have no memory of them because they went on till I was about 2 years old.
Right, so tiny.
But the first time I remember meeting my birth mum was when I was around 10. So the decision around adoption had been made. I'd essentially been offered carrying on being fostered. a new system at the time called special guardianship, as it was, and full adoption. And, with my mum and dad, I said, well, I'm not going anywhere, so let's go for full adoption. And as part of that process, Northumberland Social Services arranged a meeting between our family and my birth mum, who subsequently had remarried an incredible guy, and they'd had a beautiful little girl, my technically half-sister, but I've always just considered her my sister. So we had this meeting in a contact centre, sort of office environment.
How old?
I was 10 at that point.
10, you have this meeting in a contact centre.
Yeah, and that was the first memory I have of meeting, the woman who'd brought me into the world. Very strange moment. A lot, I think, for any 10-year-old to cope with. But again, everyone handled it incredibly well, really supported me. I think I had the inevitable emotional up and downs from that. But on the whole, that was the start of a good relationship. What were the
emotional ups and downs as a result of that?
I think any kid in care, and I say this recognising that every child's experience is different, and the outcomes are often quite different. But even for those of us who we can look back and say, actually, the outcomes have been really good, you still have those moments where you go, why am I going off for this medicals? Why am I having a court case? What could have been different at that point? And actually, is this a better life? Would that have been a better life? It's always the kind of, is the grass greener? And so you go through that. Now, my conclusion, obviously, is that the Paffeys have been amazing. They stepped in at a moment where I needed that stability in life, and they gave me every opportunity that I've ever had. So there's no doubt in my mind at all that the path I've lived has been the right one. But you do go through that, and I think every child does.
What do you feel? You've talked a lot about how you feel about the Paffeys, who brought you up. Lots of love and affection. How do you feel about your birth mum?
I can only imagine what it was like to be her and facing the things that she did. Still a teenager.
Wow. So she was a teenage
baby.
Mum.
Yeah. And we all know kind of societal stigma around that, particularly in the late 70s. It was worse than it is now. She had more than enough people probably judging that situation. I don't judge. And actually, the things I've done since, becoming a counsellor, becoming responsible in Southampton City Council for children's services, working to ensure that actually where families need early help and support, that it is there, because that's what often makes a difference. So I certainly don't judge anyone. There are life circumstances that happen to people, and all we can do is make sure that support is there when it's needed.
Now, I know Mum and Dad Paffey are no longer with us, so they didn't
sadly
see you being elected to Parliament. Is birth mum still with us?
Yes, yeah.
And do you still see her?
Yeah, I haven't seen her for a few years, but we do keep in touch by text and so on. And it was really lovely to get a text from her at the time saying, really incredibly proud of you. You know what you want and you go for it. So I keep in touch with her. My sister was bridesmaid at our wedding.
Oh, nice.
My little girls were flower girls at her wedding. So,
Lovely.
yeah, we do have a relationship.
If there was one policy change, because you're now a lawmaker, one policy change that you could introduce, which would have made your life as someone who grew up being cared for by another family, others are in social care, children's home, etc. Is there a policy change that would have made your life and those who are currently in the system lives better?
The policy that I most benefited from and which has set the compass of my life up is that there were foster carers there, and enough of them. That the pressure on that system now is much greater than it was then, and we frankly don't have enough foster carers across the country. Every council will tell you that they struggle to place children where they know that they're going to get a stable family home. That's why quite often they turn to independent fostering agencies outside of the council. Often that means outside of the area, so children are then pulled out of where they know, perhaps their schools, their support networks. So if there's one thing I would say we need to do, it's ensure that we, by whatever means, have more foster carers, be that through promotion, be that through better support or financial support, foster care is the best place for those children to be, and ensure that those carers, who are brilliant people up and down this country, who open their homes and love and give children the safety and security and support they need at a crucial moment in life, we simply haven't got enough of them, and they need that support so that they can meet the needs of children. I would say as well, typical adopted kid, you asked me one thing, I'm going to ask for two now. The other thing is that bridge to adulthood and independence for a lot of our care leavers. Again, I'm very lucky. I had my parents who, although they'd never been to university, but they supported me to be the first in our family to go. That was incredible sort of advice and support at the time. Not everyone between 16 and 18 has that. So actually, where there's a cliff edge at the minute in lots of ways around that support, we've got to do better at helping care leavers on that journey to independence.
It's been fascinating, a pleasure. Congratulations on your election.
Thank you.
And I hope your call is heeded to get more foster carers who can be as great as the Paffeys were to you, Darren Paffey. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gloria.